Good morning. Is everyone set? Happy for me just to look down the middle between the cameras? Just there? Very good. That's great. We have 4 new cases of COVID-19 in Queensland overnight, all from international arrivals in hotel quarantine, international travellers in hotel quarantine. That means there's no further community transmission, which is fantastic news, and it just underlines how it's better to have to lock down for 3 days than for 3 months. That brings our total now to 1,492. 75 of those are active and all in hospital. We did 7,514 tests. The 4 returning travellers, one had been in PNG, 2 in Lebanon and 1 in India. I looked back to similar figures for Easter Monday last year, and I'm sure many people will have spent some of their Easter reflecting on where we were last year. At that time, we had 540 active cases, but just 23 of them were in hospital, underlining how our hospitals are currently bearing more of the burden than through most of the pandemic. We've been monitoring very closely the weather situation, particularly along the coast. The system that we had feared would move across the coast has instead moved further away and continues to drift further away. Overnight, our SES and Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service rangers rescued 11 people from Byfield National Park who had become stranded when a creek had risen around their campgrounds. I understand it was 11 campers and a dog. They are all safe, and we thank our SES and our park rangers, and just remind everyone who's camping out in the weather to keep an eye on those updates from the QPWS. As I mentioned, we expect the weather situation to continue to ease, but it will continue to be wet, particularly along the southeast coast. And given that is the region in which we expect most of the traffic today is one of the busiest days for people travelling from the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast back to Brisbane. Our main message now is for people to please drive safe, please take care on the roads. Think about all of the efforts that we went to over the last 12 months or so to keep Queenslanders safe from COVID-19, and we were incredibly successful. We managed to limit the number of deaths to just 6, just 1 of those locally acquired. In that same time period, 354 people died on our roads. And so just imagine if we'd put the same effort into taking care of each other on the roads as we did through the pandemic, their lives that could have been saved. We've already lost 76 people to road deaths already this year. That's 26 more than this time last year. On a positive note, though, it's been a bumper weekend for our tourism operators. 75,000 people flew into Cairns from the southeast, from Sydney, and largely from the southeast, Sydney and Melbourne. Lots and lots of full flights arrived on Thursday and Friday. That's 90% of the 2019 Easter arrivals, so 90% of the pre-COVID levels. Many hotels are reporting occupancy at above 90%. It's been a busy weekend in the central Queensland region. I understand the Rocky Nats has been a very successful show car festival with Burnouts Drifting and a Thirsty Merc concert. And on the Sunshine Coasts and Gold Coast, very busy as well. Gold Coast Airport had its busiest day for arrivals on Thursday. Gold Coast ranks in the top searches for travel websites. The Outback's been really busy as well. And so it's wonderful that Queenslanders and Southerners have supported our tourism regions. Now we just want to make sure we can get everyone back home safely. We'll get an update from the Deputy Chief Health Officer from QFES and from the Bureau.
Thank you, Deputy Premier. Good morning, everyone. The first thing both Dr Young and I do in the morning is check the figures, the cases overnight, and it's really pleasing to see that we haven't had any more local community-acquired cases this morning. Unfortunately, we still have 4 cases, as the Deputy Premier said, acquired in hotel quarantine, but that's as we expect. No more local community cases, so that's fantastic news. The testing, not unexpectedly, did decrease yesterday, so we only did around 7,500 test samples in the last 24 hours. So I just want to remind people, if you haven't already, please check the list of location exposure sites on the web and follow that advice. Even if you haven't been in those location sites, if you have any symptoms at all, please go along to your nearest testing clinic and have a test. It's very accessible, straightforward and easy to do, and it helps protect the community. So I just encourage people to do that as well, and otherwise enjoy your Easter Monday. Thank you.
Just on the PA hospital, what are engineers doing there, and are they looking at ventilation or air conditioning as a possible spreader of the virus?
Well, as we said yesterday, that is all under review, so I don't have the details of exactly what they're doing, but as soon as the outcomes of that review are known, the Chief Health Officer or myself will let everyone know.
Are you concerned about those testing numbers? I mean, we were seeing 30,000, 20,000, even yesterday they were quite high. Are you worried that they're so low overnight?
I'd just like people to continue to be tested if they need to be. So, you know, that may reflect the fact that everyone feels well in the community. Probably not. So, you know, that's why I'd like to encourage everyone to continue to get tested. I think on Easter Sunday people may have other things to do, but, you know, if anyone has any symptoms at all, go along and get a test. Again, check the location sites if you haven't already. It's really important you follow the advice there. We've still got a period of time before we can be absolutely confident that we don't have community transmission, given that these two events happened some time ago. So I'm not so much concerned. I just want to remind everyone that that's what we'd like them to do.
How long do you suspect that Ward 5D to be closed for? And is it likely to reopen anytime soon?
Again, as we said yesterday, I don't have the answers to those questions. So at the moment, there are no cases, people with COVID in that ward. Patients have been moved elsewhere. It's had a deep clean. And we feel that there may have been an environmental event based on what we know from the cases, and that's what will be under review. Once those outcomes are known, those questions will have an answer.
Dr. Bennett, air conditioning was ruled out as a vector in the Grand Chancellor. Are we still very confident? Could that be the case in 5D?
It's not just air conditioning alone. As I said, there's a range of factors. You know, it is about airflow, ventilation. Air conditioning is one thing. They're all the things that the experts will need to have a look at when they're reviewing the circumstances. We may not know. As we've seen before, we don't necessarily have an answer. Remember, we're dealing with a virus that if it can find a way to transmit, it will, and there's not always a ready answer, but that's what the review is for, and to learn any lessons, if there are some, that can be applied elsewhere.
When will we know if that community transmission and that period of risk is over for this latest outbreak?
So the restrictions Dr Young has put in place are from 14 days from the last time someone was infectious in community. That was on the 30th of March from memory. It'll be reviewed then. If we have no more community cases, that will be reassuring. Being completely assured that there's no transmission in community means that we ask the community for anyone who is sick to come and get tested. Otherwise, clearly we could have hidden transmission. But I think we can be fairly confident in 14 days, if we have no more locally acquired cases, that outbreak is reasonably under control.
And just in terms of the plans for the RWH, when are those plans expected to be finalised? And is there any reason why that hospital is being favoured over other hospitals?
So I'm not aware that hospital is being favoured. I think, as we mentioned yesterday, options for how people with COVID are cared for are being explored by the Chief Health Officer. So that's as much as we can say at this point in time. I'm not aware that RBH is favoured. I think, again, once the Chief Health Officer has those outcomes, she'll let you know.
Go first.
Go first. Maybe with the Bureau.
Okay. Good morning. So severe weather warning remains current for areas of southeast Queensland for the potential of locally heavy rainfall, damaging winds and hazardous surf conditions about our coastlines. Although the peak period of severe weather has probably passed from overnight, the severe weather risk still remains, though it should start to abate as we move into tonight and into Tuesday. These conditions were all being driven by a subtropical low that formed off the Fraser Island coast, and as of 10 a.m. this morning, it was situated approximately 90 kilometres east of Fraser Island and was slow moving and heading slowly southwards offshore of the Sunshine Coast. And as a result of this system moving southwards, the severe weather risk should start to diminish into Tuesday.
Our flood watch still remains in force for coastal catchments between St Lawrence and the Queensland-New South Wales border, including areas of the Darling Downs as well. This is mainly due to the fact that we have a lot of saturated catchments around southeast Queensland. So although the heavy rain risk is starting to diminish, a lot of our catchments are very saturated and will respond quite quickly to any further rainfall over the next 24 hours. And we're still going to have quite a lot of shower activity around over the next 24 hours as we move into Tuesday. But as that low pressure system that we talked about starts to move away, those showers should also start to abate, and so should our flood risk. That's all I have to report on from the Bureau, but happy to pass it over to Mr Wassing to report on from a QFS point of view.
Today we were warned about life-threatening flash flooding. Is that still the case, or that is no longer a warning in place now?
No, so yeah, the higher end impacts and the high risk flooding that was being projected yesterday, that risk seems to be now diminishing, given this low pressure system is slightly further offshore than initially anticipated.
So where is the heaviest rain going to fall then today, and what could we be looking at totals-wise?
So the heaviest of the rainfall is all currently focused offshore of Fraser Island and the Sunshine Coast, and though we do still have quite a bit of shower activity occurring along the southeast Queensland coastline. While it remains slow moving off the Fraser Island and Sunshine Coast at the moment, that's where the main risk of any further heavy rainfall will be during the course of today.
So what's the worst case scenario at this stage that you're looking at?
So probably the main hazard of risk at the moment is going to be our hazardous surf conditions, because we've got such a strong low pressure system sitting off our coastline at the moment, producing strong to gale force winds. We're going to see quite hazardous conditions about our coastline during the course of today and into tomorrow. There is also the risk of locally damaging wind gusts, because we do have such a strong low pressure system sitting off our coastline. We are starting to see strong to near gale force winds about locations such as Moreton Island, the Sunshine Coast and Fraser Island. So that'll be the primary risk during the course of today, and also being conscious that we're still going to have further shower activity occurring on about what is already very wet catchments at the moment.
Would you say the Gold Coast is largely avoided this weather system? What's the outlook there?
Yeah, so in terms of the Gold Coast, the main risk again will be the hazardous surf conditions that remain in force. Conditions are going to be quite choppy on the water, so being careful in our waters for the Gold Coast is going to be the main risk today. And also just being careful on our roads with all this further shower activity and quite a lot of people potentially driving back with Easter Monday traffic. It's just being careful with either driving to the conditions with any further showers that may occur. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Good morning. I think from a Queensland Fire Emergency Services perspective, we're very pleased to see the abating weather, as you would expect. Having said that, though, we still have close to 100 swiftwater rescue operators in southeast Queensland that are at the ready from fire rescue, and hundreds of SES volunteers. As we heard from the Deputy Premier already yesterday, there were actually two groups in the Byfield National Park and State Park area that became isolated from rising floodwaters. One of those groups was able to get to safety by themselves, but the others are requiring the support from local SES and local rangers, the 11 people and the one dog. Nice to see everybody home safely. Our key message really today is, as we've heard, is it is still wet, particularly along those coastal areas. For the travelling public, just take your time, be patient. If it's busy on the roads, we would rather you be late and just take your time on the travelling highways in particular. There is still a chance, as we've heard from the Bureau, for localised flooding. There won't be flash flooding, but again, if the waters are flooded, if the roads are flooded, you don't know what's under the road. If it's flooded, forget it, turn back and find alternative routes. So we are at the start of the school holidays. We want everyone to enjoy the school holidays as the weather abates, and our crews will remain at the ready to support. But we would rather that they don't need to respond to any incidents of any type. Thank you.
Just on that rescue, how did you get the people out, and can you explain a bit more about what happened there?
Yes, certainly. So a lot of our, to begin with, we've been in really good communications with the travelling public and the camping public through Queensland Parks and Wildlife, the local ranger groups, and in this case, the 11 people and the one dog. They became isolated. They're in a safe high ground area, and there was a conversation with respect to whether they stayed there until the waters receded. However, it was believed that it was better to get them out. They didn't have really supplies for all of that long to sustain themselves to stay there. So in fact, we actually decided that it was quite safe from an operational perspective. We got the SES flood boats, travelled across the flood waters, and through small groups just brought them back to safety.
That must have been pretty relieved when they were rescued.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we see often with campers is in some cases campers will go to areas they're very familiar with, and in other cases, and I believe in this case it was an area that wasn't so familiar for them, and in the rising floodwaters, irrespective of any of the other messages, meant that they got isolated. I was fortunate with our SES crews that we had good communications through the local rangers, and then they're very apt in terms of evacuating or rescuing people that become isolated in this situation.
What time did that happen?
That was very late yesterday afternoon, so it was sort of on just as things were getting dark, and so again that was taken into consideration from an operational safety perspective. We prefer to do our operations in the day where it's a little bit easier for us, our crews, but also for those that might be in this case being rescued.
And did the campers call in from their phones, or like how did that happen? Because phone reception is pretty bad there.
Yes, I think my understanding is there were certainly communications through the local rangers and then back into the SES crews to be able to, and as I indicated initially, that was a conversation around they were safe, they were quite comfortable, but we decided to get them out for the broader reasons in terms of just their safety ultimately and their well-being.
Were there children involved?
I'm not aware of the specific ages.
Has there been any other rescues apart from that in the weather?
No, in this case we've been very fortunate. I think by and large the public and the people that have been travelling more broadly have been well communicated with, but also listened to the messaging, and so they've really tuned into the updates from the Bureau, the local radio stations and the like. So it's been, so we would much prefer to have all of our people available but not responding than ultimately having to respond.
Given what we saw a few weeks ago, you must be relieved that this weather wasn't as bad as it was predicted to be.
Absolutely. I know sometimes people would criticise weather predictions. We would always like to, the Bureau do an amazing job from our perspective in terms of the conditions, and it's really always a matter of actually dealing with the potential risks, and we will always share the information with the public in terms of what that potential risk is. Thank you.
All good?
Deputy Premier, can I just ask you about the hooning incidents we saw over the weekend? Looked pretty bad, obviously police were targeted. Some of these hoons want their own dedicated facility where they can go do skids and burnouts. Do you think that's a good idea?
Oh, look, I think there's lots of ways people can enjoy themselves legally, but what happened at this illegal gathering, this illegal hooning, is illegal, and people should expect the police to enforce those laws. We have new laws before the Parliament which will increase the onus of proof on vehicle owners, but the main message, you know, I've only heard reports, and I understand you all have footage. It sounds like it was madness, and that people's own safety was at risk, the safety of others was at risk, the safety of police and reporters was at risk, and nobody should be doing that just to have fun. And so, you know, I understand the police will be doing what they can to identify everyone who was involved, and if you were there, you should expect a visit over the coming days.
And what about this idea of a dedicated facility? Is that a good idea, or is it stupid?
Well, look, as I say, there are lots of dedicated facilities that allow people to enjoy their vehicles legally. These folk broke the law, and they should expect the law to be enforced. But, you know, I have Lakeside Raceway close to, in my community, close to where I live. People can go there. There are other facilities at Willowbank. I think the RACQ runs a facility. There's lots of ways people can enjoy their cars without breaking the law. They could go to that festival in Rockhampton I mentioned earlier. This is a legal activity. It is unsafe, and people should expect the police to enforce the laws.
Just on another matter, no body, no parole laws. Victims groups say that they're not strong enough. We've seen a few cases where people are being released. What's the government doing there?
Oh, look, we've heard those concerns, and that's why when we went to the election, we committed to review those laws. Victims groups and representatives should be assured that that review will occur. The commitment was that it would occur in this term of government, but the people doing the review will engage very closely with those groups, because what we want to make sure is that the laws protect victims and their families and deliver to them first and foremost.
National Cabinet's coming up this week. Is there any issue that the state government's going to be pushing?
Well, there's been a lot of issues around since the last National Cabinet. No doubt the Prime Minister will continue to try to use the vaccine rollout and COVID more generally to distract from the government's other problems. That's been a very orchestrated campaign over the last few days to try to stop you all talking about Brittany Higgins and rape and sexual harassment and all of the things that have happened in Canberra. They were, in fact, so eager to distract everybody from those topics that they put at risk confidence in their own vaccine rollout program that continued yesterday with Peter Dutton's outrageous attack on our Premier. And so, you know, if Scott Morrison stays true to form, then I'd expect over the coming days they'll continue to try to find lots of distractions so that people are talking about that and not the treatment of women in Canberra.
Sorry, what issues will the state government be pushing?
Look, I'm sure there'll be a whole range of conversations. The vaccine rollout, we continue to advocate for a national quarantine centre so that we don't have to cut numbers every time we have an outbreak, so that we don't have these risks of an outbreak from return travellers. So that will continue to be on the agenda too.
Where are we up to with that quarantine centre? Is it ever actually going to happen?
Well, unfortunately, we can't get a straight answer or even a statement of support in principle out of the Commonwealth, out of Scott Morrison. That's what we need. In particular, we need their support to allow for repatriation flights to land at Toowoomba. If we'd got that go-ahead when we first suggested this, we probably wouldn't have needed the lockdown last week.
No more. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, David.